everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Special thanks to Joel and Creative Mornings for having me. And Drew, your poetry was so beautiful this morning. So thanks for setting the wonderful tone today. I'm so nervous. Hold on. um, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm an artist. I'm a journalist. I'm a writer, cartoonist, zine maker, and last year I wrote my first book ever, a graphic memoir called I Was Their American Dream, about being first generation Filipino Egyptian American. And I'm really honored to speak to a room full of creatives about my creative process and in making this book, and about how I was able to tap into my roots for creative inspiration, something that I have never in my life had previously done. And I think it's important to sort of walk you through my creative history to give you a sense of how I arrived to writing a book about my life and culture as a half woman. All right. So I made it different colors. This might be a graphic designer's nightmare, this deck, by the way. So just nothing's even. So I have been making zines and comics since I was a little kid. I used to cut up YM magazines and cut up 17 in middle school, and I would make my own version of it called the Monthly Mall, where I also had tips like get model skin, which I didn't even know what I was saying. And then when I grew up and went to high school, I was like, you know what, like pop culture's dead. I'm like into ska and punk now. And so I made this zine. I don't even know what anti-corruption meant. I don't even know what I was saying. I think I saw it in other zines. I don't even know. But I basically printed these out and distributed them around high school and gave them for free at the front of Tower Records, RIP, so people could take. This is like this guy who I thought was really cute. It's a MySpace picture, and I made him punk. And I thought that was so cool. I can't even read you the text on this because it's cringy. And then, I wanted to say, magazines and zines and comics became my whole life. I studied in college, I studied magazine journalism, and then I ran the school music zine in high school too, and college. And then when I graduated and went to DC for my internship, I've been here forever, I said, you know what? Like, music isn't cool anymore. Like, I'm really into like food and culture now. So I started a zine with my friends as a way to find the artistic community in DC. Like, starting a project's always a good way to do it. It's a zine called The Runcible Spoon. And it was about food and humor, and we literally made up recipes and like collage stuff. I would just like, it was a mess. But it actually ended up becoming like really popular. Bookstores in like Copenhagen and Tokyo and Amsterdam wanted to buy it, and then it blew up. We were in the Times, and then we were in the Washington Post, and it was a really cool project to run in my 20s. But then I was like, nah, I'm kind of over this project. My friends have moved on. This is the slide that I think you guys are gonna hate. Design-wise. So I continued making zines on the side, doing my own solo work, always making zines and comics, and most recently, after the Runcible Spoon, I started running the DC Art Book Fair. I just, DC is amazing because, I was like, hey, is anyone doing an art book fair? And there was, no one. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to do it with my friends. And so here we are, 4 years later. We have it coming up in June at the National Museum for Women in the Arts. And it's basically a whole bunch of zine makers and artists and bookmakers selling their stuff. It's a really great community. Okay, so I am telling you all of this because I wanted to prove to you that I really never thought about race or personal history or identity issues for most of my creative life until a wonderful thing happened. 2016. We all know what happened in 2016 with the elections, and this was around the time when I started to see these really strange ideas about immigrants being infiltrated online and coming out of our public officials' mouths, and also just being shared I heard some really strange things like immigrants, they're coming to steal our jobs. Immigrants, they're rapists and bad hombres. And they're terrorists, which is like, I thought 9/11 happened and we're over this, but apparently not. It was just so jarring to hear these very negative views. We're building this wall to like keep them away from us. To hear these views about immigrants, because literally my America that I grew up with did not look like that. I grew up in a small town, what am I saying? Not a small town. I grew up in a suburb of LA called Cerritos. And it was probably the most diverse place I've ever seen. Most people in my elementary and middle school, they were Filipinos and Portuguese people. It was a place where I could have celebrate Ramadan with my Egyptian family on one weekend, and then another weekend wear traditional Filipiniana clothes and sing Tagalog songs with my family. So it just was a very diverse place. And it was this picture of America that I just felt like wasn't known. And I was like, how could we be in 2016 and like this version of America isn't seen? I thought that was insane to me. So I was like, all right. During this time, I think some friends of mine were like, well, I'm going to take action. I'm going to donate to the ACLU. I'm going to, donate to Planned Parenthood. I'm going to give I'm going to walk in the Women's March. And I was like, I want to do something that's more true to me and more true to my talents. So I decided that what I would do is draw cartoons to sort of help address the things that I was seeing in the news and create like a counter narrative. So I drew this cartoon. All the cartoons that I made around this time were in direct response to what I was seeing. So in response to the idea that immigrants were desperate to come to this country because of poverty or war, which is definitely a story for some immigrants, that's not a story for all immigrants. I drew this cartoon life before my mom came to America. My mom grew up in the Philippines, which is a low-income country and developing country, and she had a wonderful life in the Philippines that she didn't want to leave. She had a great job. She had a boyfriend. She had friends. She was very happy and only was dragged to the US because that's what the family wanted. So she had to do what the family wanted to do. And then to sort of buck the idea that Muslims are terrorists, which I can't believe that was still something that was being circulated. I drew this cartoon to soften the blow of to make sure that people weren't scared of Muslims. Like I drew this cartoon about my dad. My dad, the Muslim Egyptian America fears. He loves, what does he love? He loves KFC, Tom Hanks, and he loves jorts. So really not a scary guy. So during this time, I posted to my Instagram and just like to my friends and stuff, and I was very surprised by all the wonderful support the cartoons got. Somebody said like, "Oh my God, my dad's Muslim too," and like I'm not Egyptian, but like I totally feel you. My dad's a nerd, and I was like, "Oh my God, my dad's a nerd too." And then like a Mexican American woman said, "Yeah, like my mom's story is so similar to yours. Like I love this. I can totally relate." So I was like, there's something here. Like, these are very relatable stories. Oh my God. So I just continued to draw a lot of cartoons, and I felt like I was having this like emotional identity renaissance. Like I was becoming like more woke. Like all these questions that I had like never thought about before started like spewing out of me, and I had like a million ideas every single day. So much so that I started putting them in this a social media account called I Was Their American Dream. And it's basically like this idea that my parents like had all these dreams for themselves, and I wanted to make my existence and life in America somehow worth it for them. All the sacrifice that they put into coming into this country, I wanted to make their life worth it by doing well in this world, and that was an enormous pressure. And I started. This was the moment. Like I was just having all these questions that I'd never really thought about before. Like, why did my parents come here? What dreams did they have for themselves? How are those dreams different from my dreams? And like, what are my dreams? Like, I don't even know what my dreams are. How did I feel about being Filipino and Egyptian? Like, was I ashamed or was I proud? And was there a shift? I would love to know because I've never thought about these things before. Around this time, a friend of mine from work was like, "Oh, you should totally email my friend who's an agent in New York and see if you can do a book." And I was like, "If I want to do my own thing, I can totally just make a zine, so I'm good." And she was, but in the back of my mind, I was like, "Oh yeah, that would be so cool, but they'll never take it." And I just sent that man, my agent now, an email. And I was like, "Hey, I have this idea for a book. It's called I Was Their American Dream, cartoons about being first-generation Filipino Egyptian American." And I sent him 6 links to my Instagram, and he was like, "I love it!" And I was like, "Oh my God!" And then, so the next 2 years, I just said, "Okay, here we go." And we had a book in 2019, which is amazing. So I kind of want to I can talk and talk and talk about the book, but it's better to just hear some of the book. So I'm going to read you my favorite chapter. It's the high school chapter. I'm going to read that for you now. I have to find it because I'm going to read it from the book. Okay. I have to have more water too because I'm so nervous. I get thirsty. Okay. Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. In my high school, the class president was Korean and the prom queen Filipino. She was the prettiest girl in school. At a school as diverse as Cerritos High, the most important question you could ask was, "What are you?" There was Brenda, the Indian American; Danelle, Filipino Egyptian American. Filipino German American; Michael, Egyptian American; Raida, Palestinian American; Albert, Taiwanese American. But later I'd learned that this question was very flawed, but that's another chapter, yo. In the meantime, that question was one of the quickest ways to understand each other's cultures. "What are you?" "I'm Pakistani and Muslim." "Muslim and South Asian. You must be Pakistani." "No, I'm Indian." "Oh." "Pakistani, from which part?" "My dad's from Tanzania." "Oh." "Isn't it against your dad's religion to marry someone like your mom?" "Muslim men can marry non-Muslim women." "But isn't Palestine not its own rightful country?" "I know, right?" "Wow, are you white?" "No, I'm Armenian." "Oh my God, I'm half Filipino too!" When people ask me this question, I found it really hard to answer. "What are you?" "Well, I'm Egyptian Filipino. I grew up with my Filipino family here in Cerritos. I eat rice every day and went to Catholic school, but my dad is Muslim and lives in Egypt. I spend my summers with him. I can understand Tagalog and Arabic. Zayik, kamusta ka? That means, how are you? So I guess both? Well, I kind of feel more Filipino because that's who I spent more time with. That's cool, I guess. I'm just regular old Filipino. Huh. Like all kids in America, we were very heavily influenced by TV, movies, and pop culture. Total Request Live, Hanging Out Here for Hours, Tower Records, RIP, and Borders, RIP. Buffy, Dawson, and all my friends on the WB. Burn CD Mixes, this is a real one, NERD, and Timberlake. Sublime, and No Doubt. I was especially into the TV show Felicity. I wanted what she had. A circle of smart gal pals who were into songwriting, getting good grades, and witchcraft. Don't touch my box. A love triangle between guys like Ben and Noel. Let's be serious, Ben. We all know I'm the cuter one. I don't really know. Oh, that's Noel. Who's that? Who's Ben? Oh my God. I forgot. Sophistication in the form of anthropology sweaters and Dean and DeLuca coffee. What I really wanted, though, was to meet real-life white people, and Cerritos had hardly any. That's Ryan Phillippe and James Vanderbeek on my locker. In freshman year, I had a mega crush on a boy named Jorge. He wasn't white, but he was close enough. He was Mexican, Portuguese, American. He had fair skin. He had 8-inch frosted tips. He had a skater punk look. I wanted so bad for him to like me back. Dear Diary, today Jorge kicked the hacky sack toward me. Dear Diary, can you keep a secret? I want to ask Jorge to Sadie Hawkins. Dear Diary, Jorge shared his Fritos with me today. Ah! But of course, he paid no attention to me. Being one of the whitest boys in school, he really had his pick of the litter. That's Amanda. She actually kissed him, so I was mad at her. I had no freaking clue where this obsession came from. I just knew that as a 16-year-old that white was better than whatever the hell I was. Why white people are so cool, according to high school me. They're real Americans. They do normal stuff, like eat sandwiches for lunch. They're cute. We've established this. They don't smell like fried fish and fried garlic in the morning. They get to have cool jobs, like magazine editors. And they have clean, perfect, huge houses. Okay, if I'm being honest, maybe I did have some theories as to why I thought this way. Maybe it's because at the time I wanted white boys to like me. Okay, they get it. Everyone in my town was brown, and I couldn't help but feel that being white made you extra special. Two, please. It's white people going into a Chinese restaurant. People said I liked white people stuff. Weezer, Kurt Vonnegut, Daria, Jonathan Franzen, Donnie Darko. I was taught from an early age that everything white people did was better. I saw a white woman wear this at the airport, so I bought one. Such fine taste. How do I look? Ma, you look like $1 million. Dang, it was probably a combo of all those things. By the end of sophomore year, I had heard it enough to know it about myself. What is it? You got something to say? You're whitewashed. At our school, the term whitewash had a very specific meaning. It meant you were trying to act white as a way to be cool. So I like white stuff. So what? It means you're a big fat poser. In 2002, being called a poser was even worse than being called whitewashed. It meant you were fake, a phony. If I didn't have that trig quiz tomorrow, then I would totally skip school. I wasn't trying to be white. I mean, just look at me. Whitewash and poser were just a few of the labels I learned at Cerritos High. There was also banana, aka Twinkie, Asian on the outside, white on the inside. Egg, white on the outside, Asian on the inside. AZN, cool word for Asian, very popular in AAM screen names. Flip, cool word for Filipino. And Hapa, Hawaiian word to describe mixed race kids. The lingo didn't really give me a sense of belonging. If I had to make up a term for myself, it would be za'atar-covered onigiri. Not bad. Rosewater flavored mochi. Falafel surprise! Inside there's a little chunk of spam. Ha ha ha. I spent a lot of time writing about this stuff, plus boys, grades, and friend drama in my precious journal. I'm going to read you some of the excerpts. 6/13/03. A few days ago, I was pretty depressed about something. I know what being depressed feels like. I read in Catcher in the Rye, the closest thing to describe the feeling. You feel like eating, but you just can't make the effort to swallow. That really sucks. 5/8/02. Why does nobody talk to me at school? No one talks to me at school. It's like I'm invisible or something. 5/4/03. This is just a few days before. Oh, this is a year later. I'm in love. Yesterday, Eric and I, that's Jorge's friend, had an hour to burn at night after their show at Michael Lee's house. So me and him stayed and watched TV in the house, and no one was home, and we cuddled. Even amongst minorities, I was a minority. Everyone in high school hung out with people based on clubs, sports, and ethnicity. Who would be my friend? This is actually a very accurate map of Cerritos High, the social map. So by the events stage, we had the popular Korean kids and the kids in student government. Then in the umbrella area below, there were the Korean girls from the US, then the Korean girls from Korea. There were the Filipino dancers by the Filipino athletes. And then closer to the history classroom, we had the Mexican punks and the anime kids. Very close overlap. Sometimes I wondered if I looked a little more Filipino, it would have been easier to hang out with other Filipinos. If they knew I was Filipino, maybe they'd ask me to join their group. When my little sister Min Min, who is full Filipino, came to Cerritos 6 years later, her social life was sordid. Hey, do you want to hang out with us? Sure. She ate lunch with all the Filipino hip-hop kids, joined the Filipino club, and dated Filipino guys. And she got to take one of these pictures at the mall. I never got to be invited to take those pictures. In contrast, I was ethnically ambiguous and whitewashed to boot. I'm a loser, baby, so why don't you kill me? Damn, it's too real! So I hung out with anyone who would have me. Pass. Oh, I tried out for the badminton team, and I didn't get in. She's wearing a badminton t-shirt. Nope, no, nah, next. Hi. A motley crew of punk kids. The group, as we called ourselves, came from all different backgrounds, but we had lots in common. Stuff we loved. We played music. We made zines and comics. We wore pins and patches. We dabbled in graffiti, and we made fun of posers. Yo, have you heard of the band Muskrat Lemon Juice? Yeah, duh. He's wearing a corn shirt, for the record. You're a loser. I just made that band up. In the end, I got the label I'd been searching for. Most unique. It gave me so much validation. At school, I always felt like an outsider, a misfit, a weirdo. But maybe that was totally okay. Maybe that's what made me cool. All right. That is that. Yeah. Thank you. So I'll show you some processed pictures because I feel like people always like to know. I never had to use a digital pen before, so I use a Wacom tablet to draw this cartoon, this comic, this book. Yeah, to decide on colors, the marketing team at the publishing house decided that it would be red, blue, and millennial pink. But by the end, they were like, we gotta ditch millennial pink. It's not cool anymore. And so now it's just red and blue. So I want to tell you about the things that I learned from doing this book. One, I think I learned a lot of things I learned a lot of things that I don't actually like. So for example, I spent my whole time, for the majority of my life, aspiring to be white because I thought that's what it meant to be American. So I couldn't accept that being Filipino Egyptian American was an American experience of equal measure. And I know that sounds very simple, but the book process, the creative process of drawing and thinking about those questions and my personal history allowed me to fully absorb and accept those words, that being Filipino Egyptian American was a valid experience, was just as valid as any other American experience. This is the most important thing that I learned from writing the book. The second thing that I learned is that it's really never too late to have this exploration of your roots. Like, I was 30 when I started the book process, literally, and had never thought of these identity questions and put myself on that journey. I just started, and I'm so grateful and glad that I was able to make that time to use my creativity to help explore that part of myself. And it's literally never too late to do that if you haven't done it before. And the most important thing I learned was that, what was the most important thing I learned? Oh yeah, that maybe the reason why we were hearing these one-dimensional views of immigrants in America in 2016 is because we weren't in them. We weren't telling those stories. We weren't adding nuance. Our stories weren't represented in them. And I thought back to my younger self and how I remember waiting, like catalog in and catalog out for the American Girl dolls to have a Filipino or Egyptian doll. I remember liking them. There were only 4 white ones in like the 90s, and later they had people of color, and you could make your own one that looked like you. But I only ever wanted to see myself represented in a book. I wanted to see my story represented in something, in anything. And so I think back to this person, this is me at 12, in Egypt, and I realized that that I was writing this book to, I guess, see myself in something. I only have one piece of advice for you, and it's like, literally, if you don't see yourself being represented correctly or with dignity, just whether it's whatever space you're in, your culture, your group, just make it. Don't wait. Make it flawed. Make it dirty. Make it fast. Make it just make it. There's literally nothing stopping you. Just give yourself permission to make. And some of you might wonder, how was the book received? Well, my family loved it, which was a huge relief. And I just heard from people all over the country. I heard from people of color. They said that they've had conversations with their parents that they've never had before. For example, I think what the book does is makes a distinction between the challenges of being an immigrant and then the challenges of being the children of immigrants, how those experiences are different. A lot of times our parents think, oh, well, like I, brought you to this country, you have nothing to complain about. But we have our own barriers and challenges, and it allows people to talk about that. And I also heard from white people. A white 72-year-old white man from Des Moines said that he learned a lot about race from reading my book, which is great. And now I encourage you to also tell your, think about some of those central questions, if you haven't, about your own personal history and identity. I have these templates to make your own zine. They're outside, I think, or maybe you already have one. But anyways, it's sort of geared toward immigrant children. But if you do make one, please tag me on Instagram. I'd love to see it. That's all from me. Thank you.